Good evening, everyone. My name is John, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Thank you all so much for being here on this incredibly sunny day. I do apologize for the sun. Rest assured it will move on to torment our neighbors in just a moment, so you'll only have to put up with it for a few moments, ideally. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is located here in Treaty 1 territory. That is, of course, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Innuit, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Red River Métis. In addition, of course, McNally Robinson Booksellers rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Brewstertown. We are so pleased to be gathered here this evening. We are celebrating both in person and virtually, for those of you on YouTube, the Winnipeg launch of Fungal, Foraging in the Urban Forest by Ariel Gordon. This is very much a launch in that these books just escaped from the printer scant 2 or 3 days ago, so it is very fresh, and we are the first audience that has a pile of these in our possession. I'm also particularly excited about tonight because this is one of those rare public opportunities where I say nice things about Ariel. So you can enjoy that for a moment. Fair. We're also so incredibly grateful to our host, Kerry Ryan, for coming on board, and I'll be introducing her in a few moments. And of course, Tom Nanke of River City Mushrooms, who has contributed this incredible display, which you really should take in over the course of the evening as well. I'm also very grateful to the Manitoba court system for temporarily rescinding my restraining order against Ariel, ensuring that we can proceed with the book launch. And just a few quick procedural notes about tonight. Ariel will read from up here following an introduction from Kerry, and then there'll be a conversation that takes place on these stools to my left. If time permits, there will be an opportunity for questions. So if we do move along to a Q&A, and if you are located here, please just put up your hand and I will run over to you with this handheld microphone to ensure your questions are audible to those watching at home. And if you are one of those people watching at home, please feel free to write any questions you might have in the chat, and we'll put them to Ariel as time permits. Following the event, I'll go over some signing procedure, but the only thing I will put in your mind right now is that I will escort Ariel out of the space to ensure she can safely make it to the signing table, and then you can all join us in some kind of like strange fairground carnival winding walk over to the table, and then we can get books signed. And I'll have further details for you at the end. But now to Fungal very briefly. Ariel has an uncanny ability of luring others into her way of viewing the world, drafting them into adventures before they realize it, and of examining every topic from a seemingly limitless number of angles. Her book prior to this one, or her nonfiction book prior to this one, Treed, was an incredible look at the urban forests around us, and this follow-up is a triumph. Ariel is full to the brim with knowledge about the mycological world around us, and always keen to know more. In the pages of Fungal, you will find erudition worn gently and an impeccable deployment of her poetic register to essays confident in subject and form, and just so much fun to read. Teresa Kishkin makes reference to her wild energy and muddy joy on her pull quote, and having joined Ariel in swinging around trees on riverbanks and lunging through the brush in search of a bottle stopper, or a generous handful of chicken of the woods, I can think of a few more appropriate descriptors. It's a privilege to know her, to read her work, and to be here to celebrate this latest batch of, in her own words, mushrooming nonsense that is so dense, nourishing, and endlessly engaging. You'll be hearing a little bit more from Ariel in a moment, but first, to introduce her officially, I'd like to call up our host, Kerry Ryan. Kerry is the author of 3 brilliant poetry collections, The Sleeping Life, Verses, and Diagnosing Minor Illness in Children, which came out from Frontenac House. Her poems and essays have appeared in journals and anthologies across Canada, and she lives and writes in Winnipeg. Please give a warm welcome to Kerry Ryan.
Thank you so much, John. Hi, everyone. It's a complete pleasure for me to be here tonight. I must warn you, though, that in preparing my introduction, I did consult a website called Mushroom Puns for Every Occasion. Which, the more I think about it, like, other than book launch, what kind of mushroom occasion might you need a pun for? I don't know. But you've been warned. I first met Ariel Gordon when we were both students of Catherine Hunter at the University of Winnipeg in her Introduction to Creative Writing class. And I remember thinking even then that Ariel, unlike the rest of us, was not there to learn how to become a writer. She already was one. She was already so enmeshed in Winnipeg's writing community. Even then, she was an inspiration. For the past 30 years, Ariel and I have shared ongoing conversation about the writing life on tennis courts, on the sidewalk of the street that we both live on, and sometimes in front of audiences. So it's my complete privilege to be here today in support of Ariel and Fungal. Ariel has a business card that says enthusiast, and I cannot think of anybody who embodies this role more than she does. Endlessly curious and playful, funny, and so generous with her time and energy. As a writer and artist in residencies across the country, tree talking with strangers, collaborating with other poets, musicians, and artists, she consistently makes room, so much room, for writers and readers to engage with the world and with one another. Some of you will have experienced Ariel's threats of violence. Show of hands. Hardly a crimini all. Ariel is just as likely to offer a punch as a compliment. And when I have been wallowing in disappointment over rejection or some kind of writing life crisis, Ariel will inevitably say to me, "You're so good." I can always count on her to boost my morale. Ariel has published 4 books of luminous poetry, 2 collections of insightful and engaging creative nonfiction, and has been published widely in journals. It's only mycological that she has received accolades for her work. Earlier this year, she was a finalist for the Saskatchewan Book Awards Poetry Prize for Sightseeing, her collaboration with Brenda Schmidt. And her 2021 book, Tree Talk, was a finalist for numerous Manitoba Book Awards. Treed, her 2020 collection of essays about the urban forest, was a finalist for the Carol Shields Book Award and received honorable mention in the Alana Bondar Memorial Book Prize. Even writing about topics other than mushrooms, Ariel is a champignon. Her books are proliferating all over the place. Stumped nonfiction essays on tree loss is to be published in 2026, and Formidable Mouth Parts, a poetry collection, is forthcoming next year. And now, enough of my celestial introduction. I'm now pleased to call up a really fun person, Ariel Gordon.
So does that mean I can stand here and poke you during the whole thing? I really want to. All right, so I know that we've been pronouncing the book. The book's name is Fungal, but it's really Fungal, and I want you to know that I am the fun gal. And at the end, those mysterious little slips of paper that I was handing out, you could get a mushroom bookmark made by Ashlyn Hagland, who is actually knitting another one right now. And I might keep all of them for myself, actually. Never mind the little slips of paper. I'm sure you've all lost them anyways. But yeah, isn't that awesome? Okay. I also wanted to point your attention to Tom Nagy's display of oyster mushrooms and reishi mushrooms. Is that right? The second one's reishi? Shiitake. Yeah. And they're amazing, and you should come look at them later, but don't eat them. They are edible, but not in this particular moment and state. I also brought a small and terrible display of some of the items that are in the essays. So if you want to come look at that, but not take any, don't take them. My partner will like tackle you if you attempt to walk off with my collection of bottle stoppers. Yeah, so these address some of the different essays in the book. This one's about mushroom kitsch. That is the mushroom, the hand-painted 80s mushroom kitsch set that I bought from Facebook Messenger, Facebook Marketplace, after resisting all mushroom kitsch. I was like, I like mushrooms, I don't like mushroom kitsch. And then I look down and I'm wearing a mushroom t-shirt. So it's here. There's also, this is my book shroom. So we actually grew, Tom and I grew mushrooms on my previous book of nonfiction. And then I ate them. And Tom was like, it's like feeding mushrooms a diet consisting only of potato chips. So this wasn't a healthy meal for them, but who doesn't like chips? I mean, come on. So you're welcome to come and look at all those things, and there's an essay about that in the book. And yeah, I'm so pleased to be here, and I'm so happy that you've come, and I'm a little overwhelmed, because I don't know about you, but this is my 6th book. By now I should be over that launch anxiety, but I still have that moment where I'm like, this is like a house party where no one comes, and all your friends are like, oh, I didn't feel like going out. Oh, it's sick. And so, I'm glad you're here, because that makes me feel less panicky about everything. So I'm just gonna read you some thank yous, and then I'm gonna actually read an essay, because you don't care about thank yous. You just want to hear the actual writing. But I care about the thank yous. Okay, so Treed was about trees and mushrooms. This book is about mushrooms and trees. So different. Now, the main distinction between the 2 books, which I see as the first 2 parts of a 3-book series, is that the 5 years I spent working on Treed were full of distress and chagrin. Though I had a journalism degree, a biology degree, and 20 years experience as a poet, in addition to my love for trees, I didn't really know how to write sciencey nonfiction, creative nonfiction. So I didn't finish a single essay for years, even though I had the wherewithal to start a new essay every 3 weeks. And I'm really proud of where Treed wound up and the work it did in the world. But this time around, I couldn't help but be more relaxed, even though I was writing Fungal during a global pandemic, which, in addition to all the catastrophic outcomes that we're all too familiar with, it meant that the research trips I planned just weren't possible. And somehow in there, I just felt more confident about the writing. And partly, I think it was that I had a better idea of what I could do and what the form could stretch to accommodate, like a uterus. You're supposed to laugh at my uterus joke, come on! Partly is that I had a great and helpful community of creative nonfiction writers, my friend Yvonne Blomer, Tanis MacDonald, Ken Wilson, Kim Fauner, the great Kerry Ryan, and Erna Buffy. Like me, all of these writers work in a variety of genres, and they're plastic in the best way, flexible but durable in their advice and in their friendship. And I'm also part of a broader community of people who love books and art. So while my conversations with them aren't recorded in this book, I am grateful every day for Sue Sorensen, Lauren Carter, Mitchell Taves, Greg Kmichuk, Adele Perry, John Taves, Matthew Jodry, Julie Kentner, and Brenda Schmidt. Now, poet Sally Ito, poet Sally Ito and teacher Sherilyn Kentner Hardy deserve a special mention for their mudlarking companionship and cooperation. And I also really appreciated spending time this way with poets Angeline Schellenberg and Joanne Kemp. Now, Tom Nagy deserves special mention for somehow being my mushroom muse. But his knowledge and good humor are much appreciated. And he's great because he's just as bonkers as I am, but he knows way more. So I can be like, hey, and he's like, la, 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 la. Which is great if you're an enthusiast and not an expert. Because my range, I'm like, mushroom, and he's like, I know exactly what that is. And it's great, because everyone needs someone like that. I also shouldn't fail to mention that other supports while I was writing this book came from the Winnipeg Arts Council, the Manitoba Arts Council, and the Canada Council for the Arts. And I don't think I could have written the book without their support, because I was able to leave my permanent part-time job at the U of M Press and concentrate on writing for a few years. And I really think that made all the difference. And in terms of the making of the book, I'd like to thank Marika Friesen, daughter of a poet. So she's Patrick Friesen, the poet's daughter, and she's a graphic designer now, and she worked on this book inside and out. I'd like to thank Noelle Allen at Wolsak Wynn in 2 capacities. She is both a smart and savvy editor, knowing exactly when to rein me in. Ask my partner, that's hard. And what chunks of writing could be jettisoned. So because I'm kind of the school of, if some is good, more must be better. And that's not always the great. So that's a really important role. And I also trust her as a publisher. She's a leader among independent publishers, and I would follow her anywhere with a battered suitcase full of manuscripts that need a home. I'm like, hello, publish these. I'd also like to thank Holly Gattery for all her promo wizardry and the time and energy she spent on Fungal, especially giving her own writing practice. And she's so good. It is something I say. So hire/publisher if you can. But yeah, I'd also like to mention my daughter Anna, who is here now and shrinking in embarrassment. But I just have to say, I'm so proud of who she is now and who she will be. And I'm grateful to my partner Michael for 25 years of foolishness. I'd like to say that my little Irish granny set me up with builder's tea, which is my one true love. But it was Michael who introduced me to Assiniboine forest, where I first learned to love fungi. So those are all the thank yous, which are always tiresome. But that's partly why you do these things. Okay. Oh, someone say something insulting so I can recalibrate. I feel too good. I'm looking for something insulting. Come on.
Start.
Yeah, thank you, I will. Okay, water. This is from an essay called Mushroom Tourist that opens the book. For the last 20 years, I have mushroom traveled, which is not to say that I went on magic mushroom trips. No, just that whenever I traveled, I would go for walks. Solo ones I researched in advance, and ones with friends to their favorite walking spots. And while walking, I would look for mushrooms. Some people use travel as a way of broadening their horizons. I use it as a way to add more mushrooms to my repertoire. It's become my way of being in the wider world. When in doubt, walk under the trees and look for mushrooms. And then take pictures of those mushrooms and post them to social media, because I want people to feel some of the same connection I feel in those moments, the same pleasure. During the 33 plus years, it felt like 33 years, but during the 3+ years of the COVID-19 pandemic, it became harder to travel as widely as we were all used to. The concurrent climate crisis, as evidenced by grinding drought, wildfires, and wildfire smoke, and stunted crops, also made me reconsider how much and how often I wanted to travel once things got back to some kind of normal. So I tried to sightsee in my home place, my yard, my neighborhood, and my city, while also traveling within the prairie provinces between variant outbreaks. This is my mushroom diary from those years, though really it is more like a bundle of picture postcards from me to the world, or a stack of flashcards where the test I'm cramming for is surviving the world. And how these work, you know, when people post pictures now, they're supposed to do the description, the image description for accessibility. I was kind of working with that idea. So I'll read what I would have posted if this was an online thing. I would have my caption, and then I'll post the looking like. So you get 2 takes on each of these. So March 28th, 2021. Went for a willowy walk in Assiniboine forest today, where I also found a pre-bent hoop of dogwood, whose red-orange almost matched the orange-red of my long sweater coat. An enormous conch, a shelf-like bracket-shaped fruiting body of a certain fungi that grows on trees that are hard like trees. and some other small mushrooms nearby. The split gill mushroom, or Schizophyllum commune, is small and gray-white and furred. It is the mushroom you would expect the white witch to be wearing as decoration on her person / robes / carriage in Narnia. And I found it clustered along the entire length of a young trembling aspen. April 11th, 2021. I found a mushroom that has it all, including a mustache of pixie cup lichens and moss. It is the only mushroom I was able to get close to, as it was right next to the boardwalk at the Broken Head Wetland Interpretive Trail. Who here has been to the Broken Head Wetland? If you haven't, it's amazing. And I actually want to go this weekend, so yeah. There were various lichens and mushrooms everywhere in the white cedar swamp, as well as red carnivorous pitcher plants glittering in the sun, but I very carefully stayed on the boardwalk. I was grateful to have the opportunity to walk in this place, that it was made available to me. Some of the time I laid down on the boardwalk so I could see mushrooms better, but that is as close as I got. A polypore, which is a mushroom with pores for dispersing spores instead of gills, with bands of green and brown and cream, with silvery green lichen and forest green moss, blurring the distinction between mushroom and tree. You can see the dark soil here, how it is crossed with brown conifer needles. April 25th, 2021. My partner Mike and I took our AstraZeneca vaccine hangovers to Little Mountain Park, looking for late prairie crocuses. In the whole park, we found only 3, and only when we remembered to look in the same spot as last year. Their translucent lilac is what gets me, I think. It inflates me like a hot air balloon, but it should go without saying that I'm always on the lookout for mushrooms. When it's unseasonable, my best bet is always the more durable mushrooms that grow on wood instead of from the soil. A stack of creamy mushrooms on a downed log, like a plate full of pancakes plunked down in front of you. May 24th, 2021. We drove out to the Bel Air Provincial Forest yesterday to look for morels. Found a bunch of false morels, Gyromitra species, abandoned cars, tiny wild strawberries, emerging bracken, new to me wildflowers, and 6 drive home ticks instead, one of which was on Mike's neck. Gyromitra is also known as brain fungus, which goes a long way to explaining what this palmful of gorgeous deep brown mushroom looks like. Also, experimental chandelier / airship. May 29, 2021. Mike and I finally found morels, likely Morchella americana, at Bel Air, but only a squat handful after 2 to 3 hours of wandering. The woods a new to me mix of conifers and trembling aspen. Still, it was very nice to go out looking for morels and then to find morels. Mike spotted them first, the bastard. Imagine 3 mushrooms with brown, black, honeycombed heads and stems that are simultaneously beige and taupe. Dust them with soil and sand, and you're there. August 29, 2021. 2 tiny lawn shrooms picked and placed on the stump of my mother-in-law's rosy pink crabapple. She was surprised I wanted the apples, but settlers have been making cider from Manitoba's native crabapples for generations. I made applesauce from its fruit for years, boiling them whole and straining out the cores. At first, I dumped everything into a colander and used the spatula to extrude the applesauce, but I asked for, and got, a food mill for Xmas, also from my mother-in-law, I think. All of which is to say, I have picked crab apples from this tree's lower branches, I have picked crab apples from this tree's lower branches, bent so low with fruit that I could put out my hand and pick, and branches almost beyond my reach. My daughter Anna was always so drawn to the ladder, those times I dragged it under the tree to get me and my hungry hands higher. 2 tiny mushrooms, 1 white and 1 yellow. Their gills impossible, but also sort of like birds' wings, lying on a weathered gray background. September 19th, 2021. Lectinum mushroom with its polypore cap and scabrous stalk from today's walk in Center Point Forest. They are suddenly enormous and everywhere, which is my favorite mushroom trick. And I'll stop there.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you.
That was such a nice reading. It's so nice to hear you reading from this book. There's a few things I want to talk about with you. One of the things that I'm really curious about is how you decide to approach a subject through writing. You're a poet, you're writing creative nonfiction. How do you decide how to come at a topic? And you know, in a couple of these essays, you've combined forms. So there's a couple of form poems embedded within the essays. Is that an attempt to kind of, you know, come at the same topic from both angles?
I think the decision between writing a poem and writing an essay, usually with an essay, I have like an idea or a series of ideas that I sort of want to knit together, that I want to explore. And I'm sure that you could explore those same ideas in poems. But for some reason, I guess for me, it seems easier to, you know, to have like 3 or 5 or 8,000 words, you know, to sort of sprawl out and to try and explore those ideas. But it's funny because, like with any piece of writing, you start out with one idea of what you think the piece is going to be about, and then, you know, and then it winds up somewhere, right? And it says that it's finished. And, you know, like you have control over that. I don't believe in the muse beyond Tom as my mushroom muse. I don't believe in the muse dictating things to me. I know, like, you know, it's so much work building these things, but yeah, you're not always in control. And there's always, with Treed, the list of essays that I proposed, like, you know, with nonfiction, you actually have to propose the collection before it's published. You can't just finish it and hand it in like you do with poetry. So you actually have to propose it, and then you're assigned a pub date. And so I had a whole long list of essays, and I wrote maybe a third of them. And the other ones, I just wrote the essays that came to me, that finished, you know, that I finished. And same thing with Fungal. I had a whole list of essays that I was supposed to write, and for one reason or another, these are the ones I wrote. But I don't know. I think I was okay with that. I had a certain looseness, and the essays there are 12 essays in this one versus I think 17 or 18 in the first one. But I sort of gave myself permission to ramble more, and those are the kinds of walks I like best, anyways. And the kinds of adventures I like best, and so. Maybe it's that form following content idea. Can I also draw attention to the fact that your skirt actually has mushrooms on it?
You may draw attention to my skirt. It has mushrooms.
It does.
And
It's
other fun
excellent.
things. So for the people in the front row, take a good look.
Or you can come peer at her intently after the event, because I'm sure she would love that.
Love the focus on the lower body. Yeah. Right where you want.
Don't look at the
Yes,
chameleons
no.
in her groin. They're right there.
They are there.
Yeah. But to segue out of that, I am wearing the clothes that I most often actually wear in the forest.
You also match your book.
I do like orange, and I may have suggested, so could we have a cover that looks like tree, but maybe is another color, maybe like orange? So, you know, it's not really a coincidence, but yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, but I also was going to wear a launch frock, and then I abandoned that plan.
I've got it covered.
Yeah.
Okay, but tell me about those poems that the form poems. Have you written form poems before? And then what are they doing there?
So Wolsak Wynn publishes nature nonfiction by poets. And often, because they are poets and think that they are funny, they sneak poems into their essays. And so I did that in my first book. And then in this one, it was more that I was writing, I'd written the poems separately. And then I wanted to enter the first sort of mudlarking mushrooming book, essay I wrote. I wanted to enter it into a hybrid form contest that Grain Magazine has. And so I was like, I'm gonna jam these in. And so and it worked. But I have to say, the formatting of those mushroom poems, oh my God, it killed the editors at Grain. We had to do multiple iterations for the book of like laying it out, because like, you pull it into, like, you know, I did it in Word, the shape worked with the font I was using, but pull it into InDesign.
There's one.
Pull it into InDesign. Oh, you have to show it that way too. They didn't see it.
Sorry.
You're favoring this side of the audience. It is where all the attractive people
Well, all
are.
the people over there have the sun in their eyes. They can't see anything.
But yeah, and so it was a giant pain in the ass. And I was like, oh, this will be fun. And it was just terrible. It was terrible. But when I worked, my very first job in publishing was at Prairie Fire magazine. And I used to open the mail with all the submissions, which is how all the submissions came in at that point. And, you know, there would be a few moments of reading the really terrible things out loud. But my favorite submissions were always the God poetry from jail, where it was all centered or in a shape. And so I thought that was really funny.
You don't know, some of these people may have submitted those poems, Ariel.
Who here submitted God poetry from
There
jail
could be people
that
from
was
jail
in a
watching
shape?
right
Oh,
now.
those two rejected, both of you. I mean, but if that's your mode, if that's what you want to write, cool. But I wrote them kind of because it made me laugh, because it reminded me of that, like opening up the mail and saying, we got another one. Not that that's what literary journals do. I was just very unprofessional.
Never.
Very unprofessional. And that continues to this day. All right, next question.
The unprofessionalism is what continues to this day.
Yeah.
Okay. Foraging. So this book is about looking for mushrooms. It's about mudlarking, so looking for, you know, treasures along a riverbank. It strikes me that there's a similar idea in terms of looking for ideas, things that you're writing about as a poet or as a nonfiction writer. Do you see those as like different expressions of the same instinct to kind of find things where nobody else is going to see them?
Yeah, I mean, my original plan was to be a science journalist. I'd been writing since I was 13, and I was told by my mother that I had to figure out a way to make money. And so I decided to be a science journalist. And then promptly gave that up because I worked for I did a science degree, a journalism degree, worked for 6 months full-time as a science writer, and then re-looked at my notebook and realized I hadn't written a single thing in months. And I don't know why, but that put me into like a panic. And so I gave up journalism and worked in arts admin, and then slowly I've been working back to some mix of like, you know, journalism and writing. And but I think the main impulse is curiosity. Like I kind of want to see how things work. And I figured out a long time ago that if I just paid attention, there was so much to see. So I'm sort of a professional noticer, if I'm a professional anything. I also feel like the things that I use, like a drug, to make me happy are really readily available to everyone, which is basically outside, in the cities, in front of, like anywhere. Because there's so much, not this parking lot specifically.
Well, maybe though.
Maybe.
Who knows what's out there?
There are some trees here. I bet you if we went outside, we could find something cool right now.
Yeah.
But that in some ways is what saved me during the pandemic, right? Like my way of finding mushrooms, but also like happiness and calm was just to go outside and walk in my neighborhood.
Yeah. And so many people kind of discovered that for the first time, I think, during the pandemic, just based on all of a sudden everybody's outside, the parks are full.
Yeah. Yeah. And so but for that, my main impulse for any of my expressions is just to look, it's just show and tell. Boil it all down, it's just show and tell. And I'm like, look at this cool thing. Isn't it great? Don't you love it? Don't you love the world? Like literally that's the sum total of my artistic output. Is that one statement?
That's a lot.
And partly it's just because I think that if we can figure out how to love the world we've got and to feel connected to it, that we'll want to try and save it. Because we're there, right? Like all that wildfire smoke and the drought, the grinding drought we've had, and all of those 30-degree plus days and no snow in the winter. Like there used to be 100% chance of having a white Christmas. And I think we got like this much snow, right? And so, I don't know, I feel like we have to figure out how to love the world and ourselves. So people and the land, I think both of those things, if we can connect us all up. I'm just gonna cough a bunch now.
Go ahead, cough. Is that part of what, drove you to write this book in particular?
No, my obsessions drove me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, the best part about having an obsession is that, so I try and take reasonably good photos of mushrooms and post them. And now everyone I know sends me the worst photos of mushrooms, taken from up here of a mushroom on the ground. But they're like, look what I found, I'm on vacation and I saw this mushroom and I thought of you. And I'm like, I just think it's so cool that people are noticing, not because of me, but maybe partially because of me. I don't like when people are like, my dog just ate this mushroom, is it poisonous? I'm like, I don't know. Don't send me those, because those are very stressful. I'd rather get, a lot of women get a lot of questionable DMs from people. My DMs are mushrooms, blurry mushrooms, which I'm okay with. And this is not an invitation to people to send me terrible things via back channel, I'm just saying.
You are the fun gal now. That's what that means.
Yeah, well, and part of that, like I'm not an expert, I'm basically an enthusiast. But I'm not an expert on mushrooms. I know the things I know, but I'm always trying to learn, and there are several essays in this book where I start to learn new species or new mushrooms, right? Mm-hmm. But part of this book is about finding community and finding connection, because for the longest time, I was the only one in my circle that was interested in mushrooms. I mean, people would put up with me as I wandered around the woods going, ooh, ooh. And then they very politely asked me to walk faster. But I was the only one, and I didn't mind that for a while, but you don't actually learn that much that way. And Alexandre Brassard started this great group on Facebook called the Winnipeg Mycological Society. And suddenly I had this community of people that actually knew more than me, knew less than me. I suddenly knew when mushrooms were flushing out in the woods without me having to know that personally from walking in said woods. And that's actually been pretty amazing, I really appreciate that. Because I both feel superior over the newbies,
well, yeah,
and learn things from the more experienced people. So it's a good mix.
I wanted to talk to you about community, because there's this mushrooming community, but what I've really noticed about you, Ariel, is your writing community and that network that you've so graciously shared with so many of us. Every time you're at an event with Ariel, she's pulling you over to introduce you to someone. And you talk about that in one of the essays too, but how important is that idea of networking, not just to your mushroom pursuits, but to your writing, to your career, and to your work?
I know some writers that go away and write their books and then come back when they're finished, right? And that's fine. That's a fine way of being in the world, but I am much more interested in going to events and hearing what other writers are doing, and feeling like I am writing, that we are all writing together, each at our own desk, right? That we're writing in parallel, in concert. Mm-hmm. And I get a lot of reassurance and cheerleading and communion, that feeling that I'm part of something, that it's not just me, it's everyone else who's trying to do the same thing. And we're all a pack of weirdos in the writing community here, but it's such a good way of spending a life, right? Mm-hmm. The way that I express it is I could never publish a single thing again But if I was writing, that's a good way to spend a life, you know, like trying to make something. I think anytime you're trying to make something, you know, like that's a good thing for humans. But I'm also like super ambitious. Like I want to rule the world. Just a little, just a tiny bit. But you know, I'm 52, it hasn't happened yet, despite my mother's best efforts. So yeah, I don't know. I really like community. I also know as someone that started to hang around the writing community when I was 19, and everybody else was in their 40s and 50s. And you know, I kind of want to make our community broader and stronger and more diverse in every way that is possible. But then I also want to make sure that they try and be a part of it, that they don't feel, you know, like pushed to the side or, you know, like, I don't know. I hate networking. Like I hate trying to befriend someone because
Really?
they're,
Seems like you're good at it.
no, I like talking to people. I like talking to artists, but I don't like wanting to talk to someone because I feel like they're important or might help me. Like that's the worst feeling in the world. But luckily, you ask another writer what they're working on, and they're like, oh, and then they're like, what are you working on? And you're like, oh, let me tell you. And it's kind of ruined me for conversations with civilians because they don't have anything good to talk about. I mean, they do, I suppose, but you have to dig. Oh.
Well, there's the mushroom people, like.
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone's got their thing.
Everyone's got their thing, and some of them.
Yeah.
But writers are good to talk to. They're good company. Yeah, most of the time.
I like that in these essays you share your network and you're writing about writers. That's always interesting to me. You also write a lot about your family. A lot of these essays are very intimate. How do you approach writing about people in the real world, especially ones that maybe live in the same house as you do?
Mostly I try, when you write about people you know and you quote them and you write about spending time with them, you really want to make sure that you're doing it with integrity, right? You never want to use your writing to hurt someone or to make them feel uncertain about themselves or the choices they've made. And so I really try and make to be fair and, you know, and to be good, I guess. And I always send the essays where I write about people to that person to say, like, can you have a look and make sure that I represented you, you know, in a way that you're okay with. And luckily, almost no one, there's been people come back and like, oh, there's a little factual error there, but almost no one has said that I'm a psycho hose beast. And I need to take them out of my essay, which is good because I don't know what I would have done. Almost no one has said that. Yeah. But with my own family, I don't ask Michael because I don't ask. What's mine is mine and what's his is mine. And so I figure I can write about him with impunity. And I do ask him to read the things, but then he's like, and my daughter, my first book of poetry was called Hump. And you're supposed to laugh at that. That's a funny title. Come on, I need some laughter. Hump. It was a book about pregnancy and mothering. Thank you. It's a book about pregnancy and mothering. And I didn't obviously ask the fetus growing inside me and the 1-year-old that she was at the end of the book for her consent. But now she's turning 18. And I had to ask her consent to write about her, even though her life feels like my life too, right? We still aren't really able to, I still can't really separate my own experience from her experience, but that will change soon. But I also wanted to make sure that she was comfortable because, you know, it's a thing. And you've written also about your own family and your daughter's now getting to that age too. Yeah. You might have to ask consent for the next. Yeah. Anna just whispered, she just mouthed at me, I withdraw my consent. So we're pulping all the books
to the shredder.
Yeah.
Should we open the floor, see if there's any questions from the
audience? Does anybody have any questions?
So like,
I'll wait for the microphone so Sorensen.
So like, how did you get into mushrooms?
When Mike and I first got together almost 25 years ago, we used walks as a way to get to know each other. And we were driving around trying to figure out where to walk next. And he said, well, how about Assiniboine Forest? And I was like, oh, honey, you mean Assiniboine Park. And he's like, no, I don't actually. And so he took me there, and it's this never developed patch of aspen oak parkland. And it's as close to like what shoal, like we used to be tall grass prairie with these shoals of aspen oak parkland and then riverbank forest, right? And so that place, even though it's overgrown, is really what that would have felt like. And there's a meadow in the middle where they have wildflowers. Now there's no bison, you know, rolling around to make bison meadows and the wildflowers that come from bisons in particular, but it's a pretty amazing place. And I found it like a little overwhelming when I first started to walk there. Like I was trying to understand it and trying to take it in, and it was just kind of big and amazing. And so my partner's a photographer, and so I had a little like prosumer camera, level camera, which meant it had okay, you know, macro function. And I started to like notice mushrooms. And I don't know if you have friends that are birders, but they're always like, look, look, look. And I'm like, that's too fast for me. Like what I liked about mushrooms is they stayed put. So once you found them, they weren't going anywhere. And you could look at them as much as you wanted. Like you could just like, oh, look, here's a mushroom. Look, look. And so I really liked that about them. And I started to take those photos because they were low to the ground, and lying on the ground in the middle of a park is generally frowned upon, you know? So I would take photos so I could look at them later, and that sort of started it. Yeah. And they're amazing, they're so different. They're kind of like octopuses, like they kind of seem like aliens. Like who invented them and why are they all so different and beautiful? And what's lovely about Assiniboine Forest is they've got these paths that they build of the Christmas trees. They mulch all the Christmas trees and they make these mulch paths. Perfect substrate for mushrooms. So normally you'd have to wander through the woods and try and find logs that were slowly decaying and there'd be mushrooms there. But here they were just on the path. And so it was hard to not become intrigued and then obsessed with them.
So they didn't move and they were like just right there.
Yes, lazy. So what you're saying is I'm a lazy hobbyist.
Are there questions or questions online?
If someone wanted to ask me why I'm so good,
Ariel,
why are you so good? It's my enormous talent.
Ariel, I'm glad that you referred to yourself as an enthusiast, not an expert, because I think it was or Year from Monday, John Cage wrote that every mushroom expert dies from mushroom poisoning.
Yeah, my favorite saying is when someone asks, because on the mushroom ID groups, people often will like dump a hatful of random mushrooms that they found, and they either ask, is this edible or is this a magic mushroom? And you know, like sometimes someone will say in the chats, every mushroom is edible once. Which means you can eat it, sure, but you might die. So yeah, but it's funny because like I enjoy eating mushrooms, like that's cool, but I mostly like looking at all of them. So I always get a little offended when someone wants to come with me and they're like, I'm like, oh, look at this beautiful mushroom. They're like, and the person I'm with is like, can I eat that? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, who cares then? And I'm like, what? And I get so offended on behalf of the mushrooms, which don't care. I'm telling you, they don't care, but I care. I should get the draw stuff.
What's your favorite mushroom?
All of them, except for the fungal disease that's killing all of the elm trees. don't like that one as much. I lost my 112-year-old Bulgardo this past summer, and that was hard. But yeah, so should we do the draw? Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. So mushrooms eat trees and you help other writers edit. Is there any connection in terms of the process where you go back to your writing, but you've been helping another writer process their thoughts? And like, is there a, I'm not saying you're eating other writers.
I mean, thank you for that. I'm a parasitic mushroom. I am a lobster mushroom because that is one mushroom that one fungi that parasitizes another and completely changes it. And it turns into this like gnarled red and orange thing on the ground, and it tastes like lobster. It is the most improbable thing in the world, and I kind of love it. And it's, you know, it's orange, bright orange. Yeah, that is true. All right, so should we do the draw for the mushroomy bits?
We can, while we're getting the draw ready, we do have one question from online, and you can interpret this as you will. Connie asked, do you have any other mushroom tricks?
Do I have any other mushroom tricks?
What's the first one?
Well, the first, in the thing that I read, which I can't remember now because I'm on the spot, the mushroom spot is, oh, suddenly there being an enormous flush of something, right? Other mushroom tricks. I have to say morel mushrooms, which are a relatively new mushroom for me, are very trickstery. Normally, if there's a mushroom, you see it, like you have to get your eyes in when you're walking. But usually if they're around and they're in profusion, you see one and all of a sudden you're like, another, and look, and down, and oh. But morels, you see it. You walk for an hour, and then you see it, you're like, oh. And then you go to get something from your bag, and you look back, and it's gone. And then you have to squat down, which is very undignified. Squat and like kind of look. And then you might see it again. But yeah, they hide. But this year, I don't know if anyone looked for morels this year. It was a ridiculous year for morels. They were everywhere and they were not well camouflaged. And Tom and I went, and it was super fun. And I went with Peter Ives, who I have to say had an unfair first mushrooming experience. Because we walked into the woods at Sandylands, and I'm like, we probably won't see it. Oh, and they were like, we found like big bags of mushrooms, which was kind of awesome. But yeah, that's a pretty good trick of like hiding in plain sight. Yeah. All right. I need my notebook and I need the basket.
This one?
Yeah. Give me that basket. Stop walking away from me. I don't need that. I need that. Yeah. Okay, has everybody got their, oh, and I need my phone. I do need my phone. Oh, has everybody got their little piece of paper? I know half of you have lost it already. Tom, did you get a number? You didn't get a number.
Wait, is this rigged? I see numbers written on there.
Thank you for that. It's not rigged. These are the ringers, but I don't know who has them. It's not rigged. Ringers. No. Okay, so I have a random number generator. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I have a random number generator, and I will randomly generate some of these numbers. Okay. Okay, the first, no. This is not a charity. I am not Manitoba Lotteries. I can do what I want.
Hold on, why don't you just read them?
Shush. 39. Is 39 in the house? Woohoo! Come. So those extra strings on the bottom are not extra. Those are mycelia. And so mushrooms are the fruiting bodies of mycelia, right? So this is like a fruit, like the way that apple is a fruit, right? Of an apple tree, and the mycelia is the actual fungi. Yay! So now there's a quiz. So, and whoever has this number, I mean, you'll win anyways, but I still want us to guess. So how old is McNally's? Does anybody know? I'm looking for a number.
40 years.
Close. 43. 43, that's right. So who has 43? So you don't win anything, ha ha! She wants me to give it to you, Carrie's mother. I'm throwing it at you, are you ready? Okay. Yay! Okay, random number generation, 8. Is 8 somewhere? Oh. Hi. All right, do you want me to throw it? Because there's this cable here. Okay. Oh, see? And you can just whip them around if you don't want them to use them as a bookmark. Okay, so how many essays are in Fungal? If you had to guess, I did mention it once. 12. All right, who has 12? Oh my goodness, Mom, that's cheating. Okay, so number random another number. Oh, this has come up twice now, and it answers the question, how old am I? 51. Who has 51? Didn't you say 52? You said 52. I know, but I'm actually 51. Age is a construct. You said 52. Well, I was born in 1973, so I'm 51 until March. Who has 51? Does anybody have 51?
You're in your 52nd year.
Yes, that is true. Okay, I'm skipping to the next number generated, 22. Oh, okay.
But I don't walk.
Yeah. It matches your shirt though. It does. Very nice. Okay, last one. Oh, it keeps on just counting. It just was going down 1. 33. Yay! Thank you again to Ashlyn. Thank you. All right. I think that is everything.
Hurry up and finish the last one.
And Ashlyn is happy to share the link to the recipe, to the pattern she used for those. If you want to go chat with her, she'd be. Well, thank you so much. John, do you have final thoughts that aren't mean things about me?
Do you have any thoughtful closing comments you might like to offer?
Yeah, who wants the microphone to roast John?
That is unallowed according to our
Thank you so much to Kerry Ryan. Isn't Kerry Ryan great? And that's it, that's all I've got.
Well, thank
Oh,
you.
stickers. I have stickers. So when you come in line, I'll give you a sticker. And look at this, look at the various things. Don't steal them because I'll be mad.
There are
That's it.
stickers located in here and in here as well. This is holographic, not lenticular.
Something.
Something. It's shiny.
Yeah.
So huge thanks once again to, of course, the incredible Kerry Ryan as host.
Yay!
To Tom Morgan, Master of Mushrooms.
Yay!
And of course to Wolsak Wynn for publishing this book, without whom we would not be here.
Yay!
As Ariel's energy is already clearly flagging, we will move along to the signing in just a moment. So what we will do is we'll bring her over there, but there's no need to wait. We can all just go over en masse and gather, but please do take the time to pick up a sticker and look at some mushroom-related items on your way there. We do have copies of the book at the table. We also have copies of the book at the cash desk. So you can pick it up first, or you can get it signed. Just pay for it at some point. We would be very grateful. We're so enormously pleased that you could be here for the launch of this truly fantastic book, Fungal, or Fungal, Foraging in the Urban Forest by Ariel Gordon. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a truly wonderful night. Let's end by saying please give a round of applause to Ariel Gordon. So, make it